Hello and welcome to the Everyday K9s Podcast. In this episode we're looking at can our dogs live longer? So for most of us dog owners, we all would wish that our dogs could live longer basically, because most dogs' average lifespan is 10 to 13 years and for large breeds it can be considerably less. And I think all of us have at one point or the other looked at our old dogs and said to ourselves, well, I wish they could live longer. And until recently, that seemed like something that was never going to happen. But there's been news that's come out that there is a drug that's being developed that potentially could increase our dogs' lifespans. So I'm here today, Sophie Jackson, with my brother Nicholas Jackson to discuss this new drug, which is being made by Loyal, which is a San Francisco-based startup. What are your thoughts, Nicholas, on the possibility of this new drug coming out? Your initial reaction?
Well, I think its important thing is not, as long as it can maintain the quality of life, it's not extending the dog's life for the sake of extending its life. What I mean by that is, we are very easy, is it a drug that you'll give to your dog and your dog's getting a bit old and things are starting to wear out, and instead of it like lasting another couple of years, it then lasts another 5 or 6 years, but it's actually having a poor quality of life. So my only thing is does it maintain its quality of life the whole time through? Does it keep a dog basically younger for longer? So a dog which would normally hit old age at like 8 years old, instead hits its old age and all the things that go with it at 13, 14 years old. Because if it does that, that sounds like a good thing, particularly for certain breeds. I mean, say like Irish Wolfhounds, which you're lucky to get anywhere close to a decade out of them.
Oh, you'd be extremely lucky. I think 5, 6 is the average.
Irish Wolfhounds are probably my favourite breeds of dogs, but I couldn't bring myself to have one that only lasts 5 or 6 years. I couldn't basically buy that heartbreak for 5 or 6 years' time. So I feel that drugs, if they could extend their lifespan to like sort of like even like sort of some age to say a more medium-sized dog, I think that'd be something that'd be worth considering doing. Also, the next thing then comes down to the cost of it. I think if it's going to be a situation where it costs thousands, and I doubt insurance will want to cover it. So, I mean, they might do, because obviously if the dog lives longer and healthier for longer, they might want to cover it, and they can have more years of premiums out of you. They might want to do it, but if they don't, they may well choose not to, because it's almost the same category like sort of cosmetic work in a weird way. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, it's not like
an essential.
Yeah, it's not to cure an illness as such, unless you consider old age an illness, which we don't, or disease. It's a case of it's a funny grey area. Not exactly cosmetic, but certainly a luxury. Vanity. I don't know how you describe that. I mean, what I've read in the information is that it would only be offered to healthy dogs. So you could only have it if your dog was healthy. Of course, there's got to be criteria about what you consider healthy.
What do you define healthy?
Does it mean it's got no problems whatsoever?
Yeah.
Or does it mean that, maybe they've got something, but at that point in time it's not causing them a problem?
Yeah.
So the idea is that you're going from a healthy dog that's maybe 4, but it's only perhaps of a breed that lives to say 6, and you then go there. And it's reading it's an injection that would have to be given by veterinarians potentially every 3 to 6 months.
That's not unreasonable.
That's not
unreasonable.
The downside of that one is they say there could be side effects of gastrointestinal upset, but they should be temporary.
Oh, if it's temporary, that's fine.
If it was something that was going to cause...
That wouldn't be fair.
No.
Again, that comes to the quality of life argument, and that's not a quality of life to inflict on your dog.
Absolutely, and there's I've seen some from veterinarians who say it's not just about extending life for life's sake, it's got to be about extending the quality of life.
Yeah, so you said about what a healthy dog. Let's take a dog like Angel.
Yeah.
Angel's an older dog now, but she's not at the age where things are really starting to go wrong. She has the odd issue with her neck and her leg, but that, to be fair, I think she's had for quite a long time. I think that's probably from when we first got her, to be truthful.
Yeah.
I would consider her a healthy dog.
Yeah, but she's 10 now.
She's 10 now.
So if you could, say, have a drug that would give you another... I don't know, because they're saying, what is the figures? I think it said, I'm trying to think how long, extra long it said, that would offer them.
These are the sort of things you should be highlighting before we go on the podcast, Sophie.
500%. So I mean, the research they've had on roundworms is that it extended their life by 500%.
Right, let's get in. Roundworms are a lot simpler organisms.
Well, this is it. I'm saying that
500%. That means that Angel will now live to 60. I just don't think that's...
No, I mean, they have said this has all been tested so far on worms, I think mice, and something else, which are quite, not necessarily mice, but the other ones are quite simplistic. And that what the effects will actually be on dogs is another matter. I mean, maybe you'll get another 5 years, say. So maybe your dog would naturally have lived to 50 and you'll get them to 20. So, I mean, if you and Angel was now like, I say, Angel's now 10. So if you said, well, she's perhaps going to get to 13. If I give her this drug, she's going to go to 18.
Yeah.
You'd think to yourself, well, actually, that's a good...
That's probably worth it.
You're looking at another 8 years, potentially.
As in the main thing is it... Because does it stop all ageing, or does it just stop certain parts of it? Because if other parts are still wear out and stuff, and you end up with a dog that's at like 12 years old, still ends up with a medical condition that it would have got in its old age, normally it gets it say at 12 years old, but now it's going to have for 6 years rather than having it for a year.
This is it. And it's just stopping one factor of the ageing process. I mean, from what I'm reading, it seems they're saying it's it's going with the IGF hormone, which is to do with the amount of insulin in the body. And they're saying that smaller dogs have a lower level of insulin and higher dogs have a higher level. And the higher level is associated with faster ageing. But you're right, there could be other factors involved there, like joints wearing out.
Exactly.
Arthritis. I mean, what about things like, we've got Merlin. Merlin's nearly, he's nearly 13, but he's had his stroke and he's got like a bit of dementia. So then you've got that factor on top of that, to thinking that yes, you could extend his life, but in terms of would you stop him having that stroke if he'd had that earlier? Could that have been prevented as such?
My gut reaction says no.
No, that's the same.
My gut reaction says ageing is a process of a body wearing out. It's not all down to one thing. I'm not a biologist. I don't know the science behind this. I know bits and pieces that I've read, but it's very much I would say an informed layman's level. If you're just fixing one sign of ageing, which you're not fixing all the others. Okay, you make the dog live longer, but of all the other things that could happen to it anyway, have you really gained anything? This
is it. You could say you've slowed the ageing process, but you haven't stopped it getting cancer. So you could have given an extra 5 years, but so like in the example of Angel, or say any dog, say you got a big dog and you give it at 4, thinking that'll get it to 10.
Yeah.
But then at 6 it develops cancer.
I think a better example actually be your joints, because joints wear out through mechanical wear and tear.
Yes.
They don't wear out through just the cells dividing.
No, this is it.
So to me, if a dog gets arthritis on average at 12, 13, saying, being a bigger dog, there's more weight on those joints.
Yep, that's true. And of course there's factors like when they're growing up, how fast they grow. We know that there can be influences by how fast the dog grows. If it grows too fast, it can have issues with the joints. This can be because of various factors. It can be through the wrong type of food for its nutrition that encourages growth, or it could just be genetics.
Yeah.
If that dog then gets to that point, you say like an Irish Wolfhound, you've got a great big powerful dog, and it's got these problems that are potentially there genetically anyway. It could have hip dysplasia, which has come through, or bad elbows, or anything like that, and those factors are then going to get multiplied every year it lives. Then by extending its life, you're not actually going to change that.
No, and I would argue that you've actually made it worse in a way, because the dog that was getting its joint stuff and gradually wearing out was going to basically head towards dying anyway. Now it could have another 8 years of having to be on some joint stuff, some steroids or something to keep its joints going, keep its arthritis at bay. Have you really improved its quality of life?
This is it, and I think that's what it comes down to, and then it comes back down to that factor of quantity versus quality. And my feeling always is that it has to be about, in any animal, in any person, it has to be quality over quantity. Because you can live, you can live to your 100, but if the last 20 years of your life you've been
you're bedbound,
or you're suffering, in a way that makes your quality of life unbearable.
Yeah, I don't think there's anyone out there, if you went and said you've got two choices, you can either make it to sort of say 80, which I think is probably about an old age now, 80, and then you'll get something, and then 3 months later you'll be gone. Or you can make it to, or you will get to about 100, but you're going to spend the last 5 to 10 years of life in misery because you're stuck in a bed, you can't go out anywhere, you can't do anything. I think most people would rather choose a slightly shorter lifespan, but finish off, but have a better time of being alive, and not linger and go. I don't think anyone's choosing to spend the last few years of their life sat in a bed.
Yeah, or lingering. I mean, I know you've got to be careful because obviously there are people out there who have problems and disabilities.
I'm talking about old age related illnesses.
Yeah, old age.
I'm not talking about disabilities or something like that. Just make it clear. I'm talking specifically about old age related ailments.
And things like, I mean, obviously, people like, for instance, dementia. I mean, personally, there's no way that I would like to spend the last 5 years of my life or whatever in dementia, riddled with dementia, no idea of anything, or in a vegetative state through the dementia, and just ticking over because my body hasn't stopped.
I would say dementia, though, because you're not really that aware of what's going on, I'd say it's more crueler on your relatives' dementia.
Potentially, since we don't know what goes on with people. But you know what I'm
saying?
Know.
We don't know. No, we can't answer that question.
No.
You're absolutely right. We don't know what's on inside. I mean, the horror, it's getting a little bit dark now. It's
getting a bit dark now.
The horror that someone inside who's got dementia knows but can't
communicate.
Yeah, that is. Yeah. But perhaps we should move back to life.
Yes, because this was about life.
This is about life. It's about saving dogs' lives, and we've gone a little bit dark.
Yeah. But I mean, I think that's a valid point. We've made that point that it has to be quality over quantity. And I think what they're saying is this would have to be part of other therapies that help with the ageing process. It wouldn't be a single thing. It can stop one part of it, which is, the speeding up of the slowing down of the ageing process, but there'll have to be other elements of anti-aging therapy going along. And I mean, they're talking about hoping to get this approved for dogs by 2026, which is really quite a short span.
That's because they've done a lot of the research already done on other animals, so getting a drug approved for other animals is fairly quick. It's not like human trials where, because that's realistically that's the next thing we're talking about.
That is ultimately where they're going. The problem they've got for human trials is because how do you judge it? Because you've got to look at length of lifespans. You're going to literally have to do studies over years, decades, to prove that it works. That's what they're saying. Whereas with shorter lived animals, you can do this over a shorter length of time.
And you also have to do it over big groups of people. You can't do it on 10 people. You've got to do it over like 2,000 or 3,000 people, because you need to basically say, well, I don't know what the rate of people getting to 100 is at the moment. Let's say it's 1 in 1,000. If out of that 1,000, you'd expect 3 of them to make it to 100. So say you get 3,000, you expect 3 of them to make it to 100. If 500 of them make it to 100,
you're saying, yes, this probably does work. And and other factors than that. So I mean, this is probably what it's going to. Let's be realistic. It's not just about the dog's lifespan. Ultimately, they want to look this in terms of a person's lifespan, a human being's lifespan. But at this stage in time, they've only got so far as to potentially be with dogs.
Yeah, I can imagine this realistically. I mean, the thing about it is, if it's I could see a situation occurring where if they can prove in short term, they can prove it's fairly safe for people. Let's say you do a trial for 10 years. They're not looking to extend people's lifespan, just to see if it's safe. And people show no sort of signs of any sort of long-term effects from using it and so forth. I can see a situation where it would be something that would be offered to people privately to buy and take. This goes against what drugs say. You don't need to prove it works per se. You can suspect that it works. You need to prove that it's safe, and you've got a good basis to think that it works. If it works in dogs, it works in rats. We use those as analogues for humans anyway in drug testing. So you could quite realistically suspect it would work in people, but as you say, you couldn't see long term. So I can't see it being offered as a regular thing straight away. Maybe in 50 years' time, when it's got through to gets to human trials, people have the option to start taking it privately, and they can do once it's proved that it's not going to save things. And then like 50, 60 years down the road, we may find people are lasting. Then you get into the more debate where should we be living longer really?
Industries also.
But again, that's
a whole different ballgame.
That's another dark route to go down if we start discussing whether people should be living as long as they are. Yeah. That's a route we should not go down. I think this is a family-friendly, happy, lovely podcast.
So the next question that I'm thinking along the lines of, we're talking about bigger dogs that have lower lifespans. So now the question is, how much of the onus should be on people as breeding and producing these dogs to improve the lifespan in general of these dogs by whatever for a reason, rather than relying on a drug to extend those lifespans?
I mean, I'm assuming that people want their dogs to live as long as possible anyway, generally.
Of course they do.
I'd imagine that most breeds have probably plateaued at where they're going to go.
But there are some sort of breeds that the problems come down to the fact there's problems that have come in through the lines, through genetically, for instance, a higher risk of cancer.
Yeah.
Or other factors like this, which now we've got things like gene therapy, and we can test for things like this. We can test for these dodgy genes. Maybe it's a factor of these are the things that are what are causing these dogs to die. Not necessarily just the fact they get old and die. They die from something, and could it be cancer? Then maybe it's a question that you need to look as the breeders. Do we need to look at these breeds that are very short-lived and say to ourselves, is there something we can do with these lines?
I can see something happening. What I can see, this is not related to this drug, I can see something happening in the next 20 years, maybe the next 10 potentially. I can see, but I'm sure it's been done already, but I mean on a more mainstream level, I can see gene editing starting to come into breeds. If you know what gene in Labradors, because Labradors are prone to cancer.
Yes.
If you know what gene causes that, and you know that if you switch it off it doesn't do any harm, I can see people, before they breed their dogs, if they go on the route of taking them and actually editing the genes of the embryos and then breeding from that, creating those puppies, so you don't have that gene, full stop. I can see that happening for the next 10 to 20 years. I'd imagine there must be some labs have already done it. I doubt you'll be buying designer dogs, gene-edited dogs yet from an average person. I imagine labs must have already done some gene editing. Have you ever heard of any sort of thing like that? I
know obviously there's all the genetic tests so that they are finding these genes in dogs so that you can then test dogs and obviously then say, well, this dog is a carrier for what else, it mustn't be bred, to try and eliminate it that way.
Trouble is that now as your gene pool down.
It does, and this is another problem we've got, and that is another factor. So, I mean, they obviously talk about gene therapy as well. I mean, they do it in people, but I mean, whether there's something that could be more brought in with dogs. And I think that's an interesting one, because say, for instance, you could do that, edit genes and stuff, and maybe the reason that, I don't know, your Irish Wolfhound, maybe the reason that a lot of them die is from heart problems, say, and a specific heart problem, and they know the gene for it. If you could then edit that to improve that and remove it, and then they had a lifespan that was more like in average, would you then need a drug to extend the lifespan?
No, indeed. I mean, I think what you'd find with that is it's almost like sort of like fixing holes in a rotten ship. You fix that one, but then another hole appears because that wouldn't have occurred because the first one took you out. So you'll fix one disease, and it happens with people now.
Yeah.
The things people die of now are not really what people died of 200 years ago.
No.
Because we can solve a lot of problems. Even cancer, a lot of cancers can be treated now and cured with a fairly high success rate. Some a lot less than others. Some are still very poor results. But people live longer, not the fact that we don't have healthier diets than we did 200 years ago. I think most people would be probably reason to think that our diets in some ways are a lot worse than they were 100 years ago.
But most people have enough food.
Most people have enough food. We're not nutritious.
And they're able to access a variety of foods.
But what I'm saying is that we are able to fix more things than we did 100 years ago. And what happens is something else instead crops up. It's like having a car. You have an old car, it breaks down, you fix it. A few months later, something else breaks down because that's now worn out. But because you fixed that other part, you would never have known about that other bit that broke down later on.
Yeah.
And so you have to, anyone who's owned a classic car will probably tell you that their car's most of the time broken.
Yeah.
So fixing one thing or another. I mean, I'm not saying it will still lead to longer lifespans. But how many things these days that people have now, which we took about 200 years ago, and then we go back to our quality of life thing, you could have had something that would have finished you off there and then, but now actually you can live for a long time. I mean, if you were a diabetic in the medieval time, you probably didn't have a very good outcome.
No. This is it. There's all these sort of factors to get involved, and I suppose that brings me around to the final question I wanted to ask you, which is, would you use this drug on a dog? Would you? Is something you would do?
It all depends on the results. So many fans playing this. I want to know what other dogs have had from it, what their long-term results. I say to you at the start, it's about quality of life. If those dogs were healthy and basically then had another few years of great health and then went down like normal, I'd probably consider it, because I'm still getting a few extra years of good quality. If they lived another 10 years, but they had a really low quality of life because they got arthritis, which you couldn't fix, so basically you end up instead of having an old dog that you have around for a year and a half, you have an old dog for 10 years. I would not use in that situation, so it's very dependent. And also the other big depends is cost.
Well, this is it. It could be a luxury item.
If it's £2,000 a shot, that's not happening.
It's not. It could be one.
That'd be out of the market for most people.
Yeah. So that is that. So yeah, no, I agree with you. That I think that's exactly what I would do. So I think that's a good point to stop this. And if you've enjoyed this Everyday K9s podcast, you might like to subscribe to our YouTube channel and click on the bell icon for notifications of new videos. And how about putting in the comments your thoughts on this new drug and extended lifespan for your dogs. And don't forget, you can also find me on Facebook and Instagram, and I hope to see you all again very, very soon.
When you stop, just lean back a bit so that it doesn't pick up all your breathing.
Okay.
Or in your case, you're snorting. You do an awful lot of snorting on the videos I have to cut out.
I have sinus issues.
I cut so much snorting on your videos where I possibly can. And the other two things you can get going, the other thing you can go is going, so! And I'm constantly cutting that out of your videos as well. So! What do we need to do about this? So! If your dog's going, so! Your dog.
So! What are your initial... Bloody hell, I said so.
Time to edit that out of the video. But...
My nose was running like terribly.
You were looking so desperate, I thought something terrible had happened.
My nose was running, it tinkled.